y'all, welcome back to another Finance Friday. I am so excited to do this video for you all because today we are going to actually go a little bit back in time because a lot of people have been doing like throwbacks to 2016 and I wanted to do a throwback to my 2019 finances and look at what my bills and income and everything looked like that when I first graduated college and had my first full-time job. So before we get into that, hi, my name is Brooke. I'm 29 years old and I live in North Carolina with my husband. And on my channel, I like to make lifestyle videos and do personal finances. So if you like that kind of content, please make sure to subscribe. We are at 400 subscribers. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for everyone that is here. My next goal would be to maybe, if we can, get to 450 by the end of January now. I'm not sure if that is reasonable, but I want to aim big. So 450 subs by the end of January. Thank you all again for all of your support. So let's jump back in time to see what my budget in 2019 looked like. All right, so I am currently on my budget template that I have down below, and it is free to use. It is a very basic budgeting template, but if you've never done a budgeting template before, this is a great way to get started, and I have a video talking about how to use it on my channel, so I've linked that up in the cards above so that you can do that. And if you're interested, the link is always down in the description, so you can go ahead and download this. This is a free Google Sheet for you all that I made. But in 2019, my first job out of college, I made $50,000 a year. So after taxes and insurance and all that good stuff, I budgeted that each month I would bring home $3,200. Now, when I worked at this company, we only got paid once a month. So that was kind of crazy that I would get one paycheck a month and have to like really budget that out, which is why I was so stringent with my money when I had my first job, because I knew that once that hit my bank account, I would not have any more money coming in unless I made any side income or anything like that. So I was really careful about making sure that I always had money to cover my basic living expenses. It usually actually brought home an average of $3,245. So a little bit extra to play around with, but like I said in a previous video, I like to always budget on the low end so I don't inflate my values. So now let's go over my fixed expenses. And when I was working at this job, I did live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate. So we split all of our costs 50-50. And so this is what I paid for my half. So my rent was actually really affordable. It was $774.49, and that included our water and our Wi-Fi. So I didn't have to pay those separately. That was rolled into our bill. It also included garbage because we had like a garbage concierge service at the apartment complex that we were staying at. Our electricity was usually, my half was about $36. And then for my insurance, it was about $4.16. And this is because I had renter's insurance, and my renter's insurance was actually $50 a year. So this was just $50 divided by 12. So I paid about $4 a month for my renter's insurance. And my phone bill was actually higher than it is today, which is kind of crazy. My phone bill was $40, and I actually sent money to my parents. I was still on the good old family plan, and the reason why this was higher than what it is now is because I had my phone on a finance plan. So I paid a little bit extra. I think I paid like $10 extra a month to pay for that financing for my phone. Because when I signed up with Verizon, they said, oh, if you sign up here and buy your phone through here, you'll get it free, whatever, but you have to, pay extra every month until it's paid off. So my fixed expenses were $854.66 a month. And that doesn't seem too crazy. When I was making $50,000 and only bringing home $3,200, this was actually quite a bit of my take-home pay. In my savings, I still had a lot of savings that I really valued, and my long-term savings was my biggest goal when I got out of college. I wanted to get that up as fast as possible, and so I did set aside $1,000 each paycheck, which is really crazy to see that even when I was only making $50,000, I was still setting aside about a third of my take-home into my savings. My family also went on a cruise in 2019, and so I did have to pay for my part of the cruise out of my own pocket. And so I set aside $60 a month to cover the cruise with my family. And then finally, for my gift fund, I only set aside $25. And at that time, $25 was what I could afford with everything else that I needed to pay for. And I was still able to, continue to buy gifts for my friends and family, even though I had a lower budget. So, when you're working with a lower budget, like make the things that you care about work within your own budget. That's what I say. Like, I want to make the things that I care about work within any budget that I have. So, next, let's talk about investing. In this one, I only had my Roth IRA. And at the time, the company that I was at, I had to stay at that company for a minimum of 1 year to see my 401k vested, which means that if I had left the company before a year, I wouldn't have got any of my 401k money. And so that's why I stayed at least 1 year so that that would be completely vested. And so because of that, while my money was unvested, I was really trying to focus on my Roth IRA. And I opened it in 2019, but I didn't really put in that much between 2019 and 2021 until I got a different job where I made a significant pay bump. And so I only put in $226 a month. And this was basically like what I felt comfortable with at this time. And I know I could have put more if I didn't put things into my long-term savings account. But when I graduated college, I had $0 in savings. So I was trying to get up to 3 months of living expenses as fast as possible. So that's why I was really focused on my savings at that time, because I had no money in savings. And then for my expenses, my groceries, every month I only budgeted $70, and I actually only spent $65 on groceries, which is insane. Now, I will say I was only making groceries for myself, and at this time I was completely vegan, so I didn't buy any fish or meat or anything like that. I subsisted off of rice and beans and tofu and vegetables. So I was really bare bones. I would go to Aldi and I like had $25 Aldi grocery hauls. Like that was how I was living. And I meal prepped every week. So I would always bring in my lunches. My groceries only being $70 was insane. I promise you I was eating enough. I promise you I was eating enough. But 2019 grocery prices were definitely still lower than they are now. But I'm still really like, this number was kind of crazy that I only spent $65 a month on groceries back in 2019. And this was about an average. So, some months I would spend a little bit more, and then some months I spent less, depending on what I had, available to me. I did have actually a higher food out budget than I thought. So my budgeted food out was $125, and I actually spent $129.89, which I guess makes sense that my food budget out was higher than my groceries, because I did probably eat out like maybe once a week for dinner or something like that. And I would eat out, at really cheap places. When I looked at my spreadsheets, I ate out at Cava and Chipotle, and like my meals were like max $10. So like I wasn't eating out crazy, but I definitely spent more on eating out than groceries, which is honestly kind of insane. So in terms of shopping, I had a budget of $115. This included shopping for other people, household goods, all that kind of stuff. So that was $115. And my average for a month in 2019 was $111.56, which I think is pretty good. Even back in 2019, when I was only making $50,000, I still really had a heart for giving, and I really wanted to make sure that I was giving. So I had $325 set aside. In gas and transportation, this was for my car. So back in 2019, I was working in the office, and my office was about a 15 to 20-minute drive, depending on traffic, away from my apartment. So I had to fill up quite a bit more. I did have a pretty efficient car. I think my car got like 25 miles per gallon. So I was a pretty fuel efficient car. It was my tiny little 2011 Ford Focus. My actual was $120 like average each month. So, this also included getting my oil changed and other things like that. In terms of insurance, my parents were paying for my car insurance at the time, which was really nice. But I was paying for my license and registration and keeping the car upkept and everything like that. In my fun fund, I had $100, and this was just so I could go out to concerts, go have fun with my friends, and I actually only averaged out $88. I talk about the money guys a lot on my channel, but they talk about bedazzling your basic life, and when I was making 50K, I was definitely bedazzling my basic life, you know, trying to eat out as cheap as possible, trying to have fun on a budget. So this is reflected in these numbers. Like, I literally pulled these numbers from my real sheets that I was using. I just put them into this spreadsheet because my other spreadsheet honestly would not make sense to anybody. Like, I was not as organized with my spreadsheets at that time, so that's why I put it into here, just to make it a little bit easier. And then I was still doing zero-based budgeting back then, so I just put the rest of the money into miscellaneous. And miscellaneous was really weird because when I went through and looked at what I categorized as miscellaneous in my record keeping, I actually put cruise savings as miscellaneous. I didn't put it as savings, so I had to like kind of like do some math and figure out what was actually miscellaneous spending. This number on average was about 190, so I spent a little bit over, but this was because I did treat myself. Like, I was like, oh, it's my first big girl job. So I treated myself to getting season passes to the Durham Performing Arts Center to get their Broadway ticket package. And that was expensive even just for one person. But I did like it. It was just like, it was kind of crazy that I spent that on myself. So some of that includes that. And then I also went on a trip to New Orleans. I did that on a budget. I stayed in a hostel, and that was included in this. So miscellaneous was like kind of a lot of things that I put into that category. So in total, I spent an average of $1,030 on expenses, which is really pretty good because my income was so low. So as you know, I do like having my little pie chart for spending breakdown. So I went ahead and did that, and my fixed expenses back when I was making $50,000 was 26.7%. So still not too bad, but now if you look at our fixed expenses, obviously I'm in a very different position. I have a partner that our money is combined, so you know that helps a lot. Honestly, having my fixed expenses at 26% even when I was making $50,000 is still really good, and I'm proud of myself for keeping those fixed expenses low. Like I said, I did have a roommate, so we split things and that helped. For my other expenses, it was 32.3% of the pie, which makes sense because you know, when you're making less money, the expenses, even if it's only like $1,000, is going to be quite large sum of money. But as you can see, my savings here was still 33.9%. Even when my salary was much lower, I was still saving a lot of money. I was still saving 33%, almost 34%. And so for me, that's been a very important thing for me to keep doing. As my income has grown, savings is still a big piece of where my cash flow goes. And finally, investing. Even when I was investing $226, that was still 7%. And I think that's pretty good. Like when you're 23 years old and you're living on $50,000, to be able to invest 7% of your income is still really good. So I'm really proud of myself. And it was so interesting to just kind of see this, to look at my numbers, to see my spreadsheet and how it has evolved from 2019. Because like I said, it was kind of hard for me to read it, to be honest. Even in the past 6 years, as my income has changed, as my circumstances have changed, I still really value saving. I really value giving back to my community and investing for my future. So thank you all so much for coming along for this little trip down memory lane to see how things looked in 2019. Let me know down below, how much were you making in 2019? What did your budget look like? Did you have a budget back then? And all that good stuff down in the comments below. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in another video. Thanks for watching. Bye, y'all.